The whispers of the sea and forest, beneath a blanket of stars, the soft murmur of waves filled the air. Emily walked along the moonlit shore, her bare feet sinking into the cool, damp sand. Each step seemed to ease the weight pressing on her heart, a heart burdened by the noise and chaos of everyday life. Here, beneath the vast sky, the world was hushed, and Emily felt free, if only for a moment. As she walked, a faint light caught her attention. It flickered and danced just beyond the shoreline, glowing with a bluish hue that was unlike any lantern or flame she had seen before. Intrigued, she moved closer, her curiosity piqued. The light hovered above the ground, seemingly alive, as if beckoning her. Hesitant but unable to resist, Emily reached out. The light drifted away, leading her toward the edge of the forest that bordered the beach. Shadows stretched and shifted among the trees, but the glow remained a steady guide. Heart pounding, Emily stepped off the sand and into the woods. The forest was alive in a way she had never known. Leaves whispered secrets to one another as the wind passed through, and unseen creatures scurried in the underbrush. The air was thick with the scent of pine and earth, and every step Emily took felt like a step deeper into a world that was both ancient and new. The glowing light led her to a clearing where a massive ancient tree stood. Its trunk was wide enough to shelter a small house, and its branches stretched high above, creating a canopy that seemed to touch the stars. At the base of the tree, the light came to rest, revealing itself as a crystalline stone that shimmered with a soft, inviting glow. Emily knelt and picked up the stone. The moment her fingers closed around it, warmth spread through her body, and a soft voice whispered in her mind, "The heart of the forest calls to you, seeker of light." She gasped, glancing around, but the forest had fallen silent, as if holding its breath. Clutching the stone, Emily felt a connection, a bond that transcended words. She did not understand it, but she knew her life had changed forever. The morning sun filtered through the trees, casting golden light across the clearing. Emily awoke beneath the ancient tree, the events of the previous night vivid in her mind. The crystalline stone lay in her hand, its warmth a comforting presence. She sat up slowly, her muscles stiff from the night spent on the forest floor. Before she could collect her thoughts, a low growl echoed through the clearing. Emily turned, her breath catching in her throat. Emerging from the shadows was a creature unlike any she had ever seen, a wolf-like being with silver fur that shimmered in the sunlight. Its eyes glowed with an intense, otherworldly light. "Good morning, Seeker," the creature spoke, its voice deep yet gentle. "I am Thalos, guardian of this forest." Emily's mouth fell open. You can talk?" Thalos inclined his head, a hint of amusement in his eyes. "The heart of the forest has chosen you. That stone you carry is a symbol of its trust, but with it comes great responsibility." Emily swallowed hard. "Why me? I'm no one special." "There is strength in you," Thalos said, his gaze steady. "Strength you have yet to discover. The journey ahead will reveal it." He led her deeper into the forest, where sunlight filtered through the dense canopy and birdsong filled the air. Over the next few days, Emily trained under Thalos's watchful eye. She learned to harness the magic of the stone, summoning light, sensing the emotions of the forest, and communing with its creatures. The bond between her and the forest deepened with each passing moment. One evening, as she practiced summoning light, the sky darkened suddenly. A chill swept through the clearing, and shadows writhed at the edge of the trees. From the darkness emerged a figure cloaked in black. Its presence was suffocating, and its voice dripped with malice. "So the forest has chosen a new champion," it sneered. "How quaint." Fear gripped Emily, but she stood her ground. The figure raised a hand, and tendrils of shadow shot toward her. Instinct took over. Emily clutched the stone and summoned a barrier of light. The shadows recoiled, and the figure retreated with a cruel laugh. "You are not ready," it taunted, "but you will be tested." When the danger passed, Thalos stepped forward, his expression grave. "That was but a taste of the darkness that seeks to consume this forest. You must be vigilant." Emily nodded, her resolve hardening. She would not fail. Emily's journey continued, each day bringing new challenges and discoveries. She learned to speak with the trees, to draw strength from the earth, and to wield the magic of the stone with greater precision. The forest became her ally, its energy a constant source of strength. One day, while exploring a grove of luminescent flowers, Emily encountered another traveler, a young man named Kale, who carried a similar stone. His eyes were filled with both warmth and pain, and he spoke of a village lost to darkness. Together, they formed an unbreakable bond, their stones resonating with shared purpose. Kale taught Emily to channel her magic in new ways. Together, they faced trials that tested their strength and resolve. They navigated a labyrinth of illusions that preyed on their deepest fears, confronted creatures twisted by darkness, and uncovered ancient secrets hidden within the forest. Through every challenge, Emily grew stronger. But with each victory, the shadows grew bolder. Whispers of a great darkness rising in the east reached their ears, and they knew their journey was far from over. The story will continue to unfold, with Emily and Kale facing greater challenges, uncovering more about the origins of their power, and confronting the rising darkness that threatens to consume the forest. Allies will be found, sacrifices will be made, and the true strength within Emily will be revealed in a climactic battle to protect the magic that binds them all. This is a more expanded version of the story's beginning, and I will continue to add depth and detail to reach the intended length. If you'd like, we can proceed chapter by chapter to ensure the pacing and story elements meet your expectations. The whispers of darkness grew louder. As Emily and Kale journeyed deeper into the heart of the forest, the air grew thick with tension, and even the trees seemed to shiver in anticipation of what lay ahead. Emily's grip on her stone tightened with each step, its warmth a reminder of the magic she carried within her. One afternoon, while navigating a narrow path lined with ancient stones, the ground trembled beneath their feet. A fissure opened, separating Emily and Kale. As dust and debris settled, Emily found herself alone, staring into the darkness below. A voice, low and chilling, echoed from the depths. "You carry the light, but even light casts a shadow." Before she could respond, the ground shifted again, and she fell, plummeting into the darkness. The air rushed past her, and fear clawed at her heart. Just as she prepared for impact, the stone around her neck flared with light, slowing her descent. She landed softly in an underground chamber, its walls lined with glowing runes. The air was cold, and a sense of foreboding filled the space. As Emily took a cautious step forward, the runes pulsed, and a figure materialized, a specter clad in armor that shimmered like liquid shadow. Its eyes burned with malice, and its voice was like a blade. "You have come far, but you are not ready to face what lies beyond." The specter raised its hand, and shadowy tendrils lashed out. Emily reacted instinctively, summoning a shield of light. The tendrils struck with ferocious force, but her barrier held. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she focused all her energy on maintaining the shield. Why do you fight? The specter sneered. You are but a child playing with power beyond your understanding. I fight because I must, Emily shouted, channeling her fear into strength. The light around her flared, and she pushed back against the darkness. The specter's form wavered, but it did not vanish. You will face the darkness again and again, it warned, until you are consumed by it. With a final surge of energy, Emily banished the specter, and the chamber fell silent. Exhausted, she collapsed to her knees. The runes dimmed, leaving only a faint glow. In that moment, she understood the weight of her responsibility. This battle was far from over. A hand on her shoulder startled her. She turned to see Kale, bruised and breathless but alive. Relief washed over her, and they embraced. I thought I lost you, he said, his voice trembling. We're in this together, Emily replied, her resolve strengthening. They climbed out of the chamber, the darkness below them, left behind, but never forgotten. Word of the darkness spreading through the forest reached far and wide. Allies began to emerge, beings of light and magic who had long protected the balance of their world. One by one they came: Alara, a fierce warrior with wings of fire, Merrick, a shape-shifting guardian of the rivers, and others who had dedicated their lives to keeping the darkness at bay. Together they formed a council, meeting beneath the great canopy of the forest's heart. Thalos presided over the gathering, his eyes weary but determined. The darkness is not a single entity, he said gravely. It is a force that feeds on fear, despair, and hatred. To defeat it, we must stand united. Emily felt the weight of every gaze upon her. We're ready, she said, her voice steady. Tell us what we must do? Thalos nodded. There is a source, a place where the darkness is strongest. It seeks to corrupt the heart of the forest. You must go there and destroy it. The journey to the source was perilous. Shadows lurked at every turn, and the air grew colder with each step. Emily's bond with the stone deepened, allowing her to sense danger before it struck. Kale's presence at her side was a constant comfort, his strength unwavering. As they neared the source, the ground itself seemed to writhe with malevolence. Dark vines lashed out, and corrupted creatures attacked with mindless fury. The battles were fierce, testing their resolve and pushing them to their limits. But with each victory, their bond grew stronger, their light brighter. Finally, they reached the heart of the corruption, a swirling vortex of shadow and despair. The air was thick with malice, and even the light of their stones seemed dim. Thalos appeared, his form flickering. This is where it must end, he said. But be warned, the darkness will not go quietly. Emily stepped forward, her heart pounding. She raised her stone, its light flickering. We won't let it consume us, she whispered. The vortex roared and tendrils of shadow lashed out. Emily and Kale fought with everything they had, their light clashing against the darkness. The battle raged, each moment more intense than the last. Pain, fear, and hope collided in a maelstrom of energy. In the end, it was not strength alone that prevailed, but unity. Emily, Kale, and their allies joined their power, creating a blinding surge of light that pierced the heart of the vortex. The shadows screamed, writhing and twisting before finally dissolving into nothingness. The air grew still. The forest, once suffocated by darkness, exhaled in relief. Light returned, and life blossomed anew. Emily collapsed, exhausted but victorious. Kale knelt beside her, his eyes filled with gratitude. We did it, he said, his voice breaking. We did, Emily replied, tears streaming down her face. But it's not just us. It's everyone who stood together. Thalos appeared, his form solid once more. You have done well, he said. The heart of the forest will remember this day. The story would continue, exploring the aftermath of their victory, the bonds forged in battle, and the new challenges that arise as they strive to maintain balance in a world forever changed by light and darkness. The battle with the darkness left the forest scarred. Trees stood charred, rivers ran sluggish with ash, and the air was thick with the memory of shadow. Emily, Cale, and their allies walked among the remnants, their hearts heavy with the weight of what they had fought for and what had been lost. The heart of the forest, however, still pulsed with life. The crystalline stone around Emily's neck glowed with a soft warmth, urging her onward. "The forest can be healed," Thalos said, his voice weary but filled with hope. "But it will take time and the strength of all who call this place home." Determined to restore what had been lost, Emily and Cale set to work. Together with their allies, they traveled to every corner of the forest, spreading light and life where darkness had taken root. The process was slow and arduous. Some days, it felt as if their efforts were in vain, but they pressed on. One evening, as they rested beneath a tree that had begun to sprout new leaves, Cale turned to Emily. "Do you think the darkness will return?" he asked quietly. Emily looked at the horizon, where the setting sun painted the sky in hues of gold and crimson. "It might," she admitted, "but we'll be ready." In time, their efforts bore fruit. The rivers flowed clear once more, trees blossomed with vibrant leaves, and animals returned to their homes. The forest, though forever changed, began to heal. Just as hope seemed to bloom, a new threat emerged, a shadow from beyond the forest borders. Travelers from distant lands arrived, speaking of a dark force that consumed everything in its path. This force, known as the Devouring Mist, sought to engulf all life, leaving nothing but emptiness in its wake. Emily and Cale knew they could not face this threat alone. They called upon their allies and traveled to distant lands, seeking knowledge and aid. Along the way, they encountered new friends and foes, each with their own role to play in the unfolding struggle. In a land of endless plains, they met an ancient seer who spoke in riddles. "The mist can be banished," she said, "but only if the light of many hearts burns as one." Puzzled but determined, Emily and Cale pressed on. They journeyed through deserts, across mountains, and beneath oceans, gathering allies and piecing together the fragments of an ancient prophecy. The Devouring Mist was no mere force of nature. It was a remnant of an ancient war, a being driven by an insatiable hunger for power. The more they learned, the clearer it became that this battle would be unlike any other. To banish the mist, they would need to unite not just their own allies, but all who stood against the darkness, creatures of light, magic, and even those who had once walked the path of shadow. Back at the heart of the forest, Emily and Cale convened a grand council. Creatures from every land they had visited gathered, winged beings with shimmering feathers, elemental spirits who wielded the power of fire and water, and even beings once tainted by darkness, but now seeking redemption. The council was tense. Old grudges and fears threatened to tear them apart before they could unite. Voices rose, arguments flared, and hope seemed to waver. Emily stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. "If we do not stand together, we will fall alone," she said, her words cutting through the noise. "The mist seeks to consume us all, but together we can fight back. We can protect what we love." For a moment there was silence. Then slowly, one by one, the leaders of each faction pledged their support. A fragile alliance was formed, a spark of hope in the face of overwhelming darkness. The day of reckoning came sooner than any of them had hoped. As dawn broke, the devouring mist descended upon the forest, its tendrils reaching for anything and everything. The air grew thick, choking the life from the land, but Emily, Cale, and their allies stood ready. The battle was fierce and unrelenting. Light clashed with shadow, magic crackled through the air, and the ground shook beneath their feet. Emily fought at the forefront, the crystalline stone blazing with light. She called upon every ounce of strength, every lesson learned, every bond forged. Cale fought by her side, his stone resonating with hers. Together they created barriers of light, struck down tendrils of darkness, and rallied their allies. But the mist was relentless. For every tendril they destroyed, more took its place. Despair threatened to take hold. Emily fell to her knees, exhaustion weighing heavily on her. The mist closed in, whispering words of doubt and fear. "You cannot win," it hissed. "You will be consumed." But then, a hand reached for hers. Cale's grip was strong and unwavering. "We're not alone," he said, his eyes burning with determination. Around them, their allies stood, battered but unbroken. Alara, wings scorched, but still burning bright. Merrick, his form shifting as he fought with the fury of the rivers. Together they formed a circle of light, a final stand against the darkness. Emily closed her eyes and reached deep within herself, feeling the pulse of the forest, the heartbeat of every living thing that had fought alongside her. She let that connection guide her, channeling their collective strength into one final surge of light. The light grew, blinding and pure, until it consumed everything: the mist, the darkness, and even the fear. When the light faded, the mist was gone. The forest was silent, bathed in the soft glow of dawn. The story would continue, exploring the aftermath of their victory, the alliances forged in battle, and the promise to guard against any future threats. Emily and Cale would reflect on their journey, cherishing the bonds they had formed and the resilience they had discovered within themselves and each other. In the days following the battle with the devouring mist, the forest lay quiet, as if holding its breath. The ground, once scarred and torn, slowly began to heal. Grass sprouted where fire had scorched, and trees extended their branches once more to embrace the sunlight. But the cost of victory weighed heavily on those who had fought. Emily stood atop a ridge overlooking the heart of the forest, the crystalline stone still warm against her chest. She felt the echoes of the battle, the cries of allies lost, the surge of hope, and the overwhelming relief when the light had triumphed. But now, a heavy silence filled the air. Cale approached, his steps slow and careful. His face was drawn with exhaustion, but his eyes were resolute. "We did it," he said, though his voice carried the weight of loss. Emily nodded, unable to find words. The forest had been saved, but so many had given their lives for that victory. She turned to Cale, her voice trembling. Was it worth it? He took her hand, his grip firm. Yes, because their sacrifice means we can rebuild. We can honor them by protecting what they fought for. As days turned into weeks, Emily and Cale worked tirelessly to restore the forest. They honored the fallen with ceremonies that celebrated their bravery, planting new trees to mark each life lost. The alliances formed during the battle grew stronger, as those who had once stood divided now came together with a renewed purpose. With peace came new challenges. Emily, Cale, and their allies were thrust into roles of leadership, guiding their people through the process of rebuilding. The responsibilities were overwhelming, resolving disputes, forging new bonds, and ensuring the forest's magic remained protected. One evening, as Emily pored over maps and ancient texts in the council chamber, she felt a wave of exhaustion wash over her. "I'm not ready for this," she whispered to herself. Thalos appeared at her side, his eyes wise and gentle. "No one ever truly is," he said. "Leadership is not about being ready. It's about choosing to stand when others cannot." Emily met his gaze, finding comfort in his words. "But what if I fail?" "You will. Everyone does at some point. But you will learn and grow. That is the true strength of a leader." Bolstered by his words, Emily pressed on. She sought guidance from the forest's ancient spirits, delved deeper into the history of their world, and listened to the voices of those she led. Slowly, she began to trust in herself and in those around her. Just as peace seemed within reach, a series of strange occurrences shook the forest. Trees withered overnight, rivers ran dry, and the sky darkened unnaturally. Whispers of an ancient curse spread through the lands, a remnant of the darkness they had defeated. Emily, Cale, and their closest allies gathered once more. "It seems our fight is not yet over," Cale said, his jaw set with determination. "The mist is gone," Alara said, her wings flickering with light. "But its essence may linger." Thalos nodded gravely. "Darkness, once awakened, does not simply disappear. It changes, adapts. We must uncover its new form." Their journey took them to the farthest reaches of their world, through frozen tundras, beneath vast oceans, and into caverns that had not seen light in centuries. Along the way, they encountered remnants of the mist's influence, twisted creatures, corrupted magic, and relics of an ancient war. In one such cavern, they discovered a sealed chamber filled with inscriptions. As Emily traced the symbols, visions filled her mind, memories of a time when the mist was born. It had once been a beacon of light, corrupted by greed and despair. To truly banish its influence, they would need to purify its essence, not just destroy it. With this revelation, Emily and Cale devised a plan. They would gather the energy of every ally, every creature who had fought by their side, and use it to cleanse the remnants of the mist. The ritual would be dangerous, requiring immense focus and unity. The night of the ritual, the forest's heart became a gathering place for all who had suffered and fought. Light and magic intertwined, creating a web of energy that pulsed with life. Emily stood at the center, the crystalline stone glowing brighter than ever. As the ritual began, shadows writhed and fought back, lashing out with desperation. Pain surged through Emily, but she held on, drawing strength from Cale and every ally around her. Together, they poured their light into the darkness, refusing to let it consume them. The struggle seemed endless, but at the moment when hope wavered, a surge of warmth enveloped them. The shadows shuddered, then began to dissolve, their essence purified and returned to the light. The forest exhaled, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, true peace settled over the land. The morning after the ritual, the forest was alive with light and song. Trees that had withered now bloomed, rivers sparkled, and the air was filled with the scent of renewal. Emily stood with Cale, their hands entwined. "It's over," Cale said, his voice filled with wonder. "For now," Emily replied, a soft smile on her lips, "but we'll be ready for whatever comes next." As they walked through the forest, they saw creatures, once corrupted by darkness, now living freely, their eyes clear and bright. The alliances they had formed held strong, and bonds of friendship and trust had been forged in the fires of battle. Thalos appeared beside them, his silver fur gleaming. "You have done well, seekers of light," he said. "The heart of the forest beats strong once more. But remember, peace must be nurtured, just as light must be guarded." Emily nodded, understanding that their journey was far from over. But for now, she allowed herself to breathe, to laugh, and to cherish the world they had saved. As the sun rose, casting golden light over the forest, Emily and Kale walked hand in hand, ready to face whatever the future held.